And here we go. I think we are live, guys. All right. Well, welcome back, Boat Dragons. This is my second ever live stream on this channel, and I am happy to be joined by Carl and Pete from the amazing channel Geek on My Sleeve. I do have links in the description down below if you would be so kind as to check Carl and Pete out and see what they're all about. The link is in the description, and you can do so at your leisure. And we are going to get right to it, but before we do, just make sure that you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. You know the drill. And we are discussing book 2 of the Bobiverse, For We Are Many. And Carl and Pete, welcome. So glad to have you guys.
Yep. It's a great book. Never get enough time talking about it.
Yes. And we're flattered you're having us on to hang out, and always looking for good excuses to hang out with our book buddies like Chaz. So thank you.
You are most welcome. Yeah, so this is becoming quite the fun ride in the Bobiverse. I had talked on my channel previously, done a book review for book 1, and the excitement and the nerdy references just keep on rolling in book 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very Trekkie, Star Wars. Okay, there's just a lot of nerdy references.
Yeah. I was wanting to ask you about that, Chaz. We know that you're very geeky too, just all the pop culture references, a lot of them hit home.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Definitely much more than anything is Star Trek references, but they threw a few Star Wars references in there too, and other pop culture stuff. We still got Homer, or at least for part of the ride we have Homer.
Rest in peace, Homer.
Yeah, I know. So, that was rough.
Yeah, that was pretty sad there. And there's just something about book 2. I always say it, but book 1 you're getting introduced to the world, and then book 2 is always a slog or a drag. But I don't know, you almost feel bad for everything. We had a lot of people die off.
Yeah, talk about growing pains, right? For a new fledgling universe that they're trying to expand, and just growing pains left and right.
Yeah, a lot happens in book 2, which is that Peter brought up, maybe not quite as common for trilogies or series. I always feel like book 2s, they tend to slow down, but a lot happens here, both with like the threats, the challenges, both within the Bobiverse, and like humanity, the worlds. We have the others, the Brazilian Empire. What's his name?
Madeira.
Yeah, Madeiras.
Yes.
Yeah, Madeiros or something. Yeah. He's still a thorn in their side.
We get to see what happens to the Pav and just all the feels there. Just so much happens in this book. Where you want to start, Chaz?
Yeah, it's hard to think about where to start, because there's so much more going on, and I should bring up a warning. If everybody watching the stream didn't realize already, this is going to involve spoilers. So if you haven't read the book and you don't like spoilers, please, you can come back and watch the stream another time. But I would love to have you stick around and chat with us and discuss it. It really pretty much picks up from where book 1 left off for the most part. Surprisingly, we don't see a whole lot of the original Bob in this book.
I thought that was almost my favorite arc. Well, for the Deltons?
He's
Right.
not as he takes a step back. I see what Chaz is
Yeah.
saying though. Like he was the central point for book 1,
Okay,
Mhm.
and
okay, yeah, it
now
was.
book 2 he is just part of the whole cast, where I feel like you almost spend more time with like Bill and Will and like Howard more
Yeah.
so in book 2, and then the other 8 to 10 generations of Bobs. And like, yeah, I agree. Like the Archimedes Bob arc is definitely a big part of it, but
Hmm.
not
Well,
as
okay,
much
yeah.
in our face.
It's not the driving factor behind the book. It is a philosophical or moral bounds arc.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
also feel like he's a good baseline for us to see how much the Bobs changed generation to generation out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
there is quite a bit of change. I mean, I think it was, which one was it? Was it Arnold that almost looks nothing like any of the other Bobs? Like I'm trying to remember if it was Arnold or if it was one of the other ones.
I forget the name, but we do start to see more of the divergence, and it's in multiple ways. There's some
Yeah.
that are physically changing it up, but then I want to say maybe it was Bill that were in his point of view, where he starts noticing like the VR settings, where in book 1 the
Hmm.
virtual reality was such a crucial part of Bob's sanity, to make him kind of have like this presence just to kind of keep himself together, where the later generations it's almost like they just have a dull background, right? Like it's not as
Right.
crucial for them.
Yeah,
um
they've become used to it, and it's not the shock of it all.
yeah,
Right.
and
The
you know,
thing that
Yeah.
stuck out for me was like how I can't remember which one it is, but he goes from coffee to doing like carbonated soda, and I was just like, what? Not acceptable.
Right.
uh, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. If you're gonna move away from coffee, at least have tea or something like
Yeah.
more interesting.
yeah.
um but yeah, it definitely get to see the difference within the Bobosphere and the divergence, and starts to kind of frame it. Peter and I have to bite our lip because we're up through book 4 of the series,
Right.
where Chaz is good and just finished book 2. Um, but yeah, like Bob 1 compared to the 8 generations later, the difference there. And then for those people joining us who haven't read the books maybe more recently, pretty much every generation has their parents' memories up until the point of divergence, right?
Hmm.
So in book 1 we had Bob 1, which was actually Bob 2, I think, because he was a backup.
Right. Yeah.
Or
He
I
was a
think
Um,
I
backup.
almost counted four.
Bob 3, anyway. So
Anyway,
like then when he gets to the first area with Bill, Will, Mario, and I forget our
Riker.
fourth one. Riker's Will, but yeah,
Oh,
they all have Bob's one memory, and then they diverge, right?
Right.
And they don't
Yeah.
have Bob one's memories from that point forward. So at like 8 generations out, they have 7 generations of Bob's prior. Um, and just yeah,
yeah.
like the contrast was very noticeable in this book. And
It was.
I think you talked about it a bit maybe on stream as well, Chaz, just like keeping track of them all. Like you almost need a spreadsheet of like, okay, like is this Bill's branch? Is this Will's branch? Is this,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
In fact, that's a good idea. A spreadsheet might be very helpful with this because yeah, that was the biggest chore for me on this book. Even though I
Hmm.
really enjoyed the book, it was a chore keeping track of all the all the Bobs and
Yeah, for me, it was more. I kind of packaged them up in my mind like little arcs of animes. You got the oh Pav arc. You've got, the major others overarching arc. You've got, Poseidon. You got Where's Bender, Vulcan and Romulus and the dinosaurs, and just when we think we're out of the fire, we're into the frying pan with the others, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see the terrors of deep space in this book too, because I mean, you've got the creatures. I forget what they called them.
Which ones? The others? Is that?
No, the flying creatures that came in and snatched that were basically
the hippogriffs.
The hippogriffs, thank you. Yes, that were coming in and basically exterminating to feed on the. That was really brutal. It actually reminded. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go finish your thought.
I'll
follow up.
It reminded me of Pitch Black. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It's the first Riddick movie, and and he, they're on this planet where it's almost complete darkness, and there's these creatures flying in and just, carrying off their prey into the deep darkness, and it's crazy.
Yeah, because they
and it
have
reminded me of that.
camouflage, right?
Yep.
The hippogriffs. So I'm curious, and quick shameless plug. We have the fortune of geeking out with Chaz a little bit later on another book series that, Hyperion Book 2. Some of the big philosophical questions in there kind of tie into one that I had with this book that I'm curious to get your feelings on.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Bob and it's not Mario, maybe Marvin, whoever hangs out with him. Like,
I think it's Marvin. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the big questions they have, and I think they reference Star Trek, where it's like, do they get involved with the Deltans, right? And how much they get involved and interfere. And Bob flirts with it until he goes all sky god and everything.
Right. Yeah,
but
that was an interesting arc.
Yeah, like when I'm in the middle of the book going through the heat of the moment, like of course you feel for the Deltans, like you want them to survive, but he does intervene and mess with the planet's big, ecological system or whatever the right technical term is, and pretty much eliminates a whole species right there, right?
Or no, there are others, because they mentioned that he didn't take out all of them, but now it's essentially unclaimed territory, and that's why I wanted to get him going with the bow and arrow and all that.
Yeah,
but
true.
It was pretty extreme, and I think the best, like, speaking of airplanes, there's a National Geographic, like, what would happen after humans are gone, and it turns out that the plants win. They end up taking back over. So, like, unless you get othered or obliterated molecularly by the others, there's always a chance of something surviving and developing.
Yeah.
Which the other point on that, so like that was extreme because it was a little more tangible, but we're going to all these other star systems and we're harvesting all the resources. No, we're not as detailed as the others, but if for whatever reason, there became a star race, unless they're like Children of Time, they're going to be SOL.
Yeah.
Where Children of Time takes a biological approach versus a metal approach. And it's kind of like ants, how they communicate through sense. And yeah, it's
Let's
Computers
see,
built
Children
today.
of Time, is that Tchaikovsky?
yeah,
Yeah, Adrian
Adrian
Tchaikovsky.
Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, okay. I
Good
haven't
memory.
read that one yet, but I've heard good
Oh,
things.
if you have trouble tracking this one, that one's 10 times worse,
Oh man,
or at least the second one.
yeah.
There's some truth in that. But yeah, what I know Peter and I keep running our mouths. What did you think about the interference with the Deltans? Did he do too much? Not enough?
I think with anything like that, there's always the risk of doing too much but not enough. Um, I can see both sides. I definitely think he overstepped in some respects, but
You get attached.
yeah, you get attached, and then they're kind of like, because they're kind of like his kids, right? And so he's kind of like that hover mom. He's like, I don't, I don't want them to see them go the wrong direction, so I'm going to micromanage them.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think the same thing, and it might have even been one of the other Bobs that called him out on that, where like he tried to recreate what he lost in his meat suit life,
oh,
where
that's right, yeah.
each generation later they're thinking of them as ephemerals and thinking of this, that, and the other. And Bob one is so like latched in, like, don't you dare like threaten my family, like this is,
Yeah.
my kids, et
And
cetera, et
how
cetera.
dare you even use that terminology to describe them? Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
whole ephemeral. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And that's something Dennis does really well with. In sci-fi, it's all about the stressors or the goings on for the impact, and Bob died, and then barely survived becoming a von Neumann probe, and had to take out the Brazilian vessel, and then cloning and all that. So just kind of like the later generations when they already know what's going on, so that's impacted.
Right, exactly. And there's always going to be that struggle with the original, right? Because like with our kids and stuff, my kids are completely different in some respects than I am, and so like in that same respect, Bob's copies are never going to be completely like him.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to evolve and adapt and have different viewpoints and
Yeah, yeah. And getting further and further into the series, you get to see how they change. But in some ways, Bob was, I want to say, like in his early 30s when he died. So, like, so much of
right.
him is right there. Yet, I think at the end of book 2, we're something, let me check my notes here. Um, it's something like 60-ish years later at the end of book 2. So, like, their total quote unquote relative lifespans have now tripled at this point, where at the end of book 2, he's been a von Neumann probe longer than he was a human. So I think like Bob 1, we still see him kind of latched more to that human mindset, where these
Right.
later generations, each time they're a backup, at least the way the Bobs have kind of framed it to themselves is like, oh, you're a new individual, you take on a new name, kind of allows them a little bit more to take their own path. You then get 8 generations later where they've done that so many times. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I love sci-fi so much, is it's fun to go down that rabbit hole and follow how it all works out.
Right, because it can easily logically go this direction if our society continues to evolve and to
Mm-hmm.
expand our knowledge of technology and things like that. So these are all things that are well within the realm of future possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Speaking of, one of the things they talk about and they kind of confront in book 2 is replication and taking people up on it. Would you be willing to be a replicant if technology kind of veered that way?
I don't know. That's a good question. That's a tough one because number one, I don't know if the world needs more of Chaz.
keep
I,
the
I'm enough to handle usually just one of me, but I don't know. It would be an interesting way to perpetuate my existence. If I wanted to, if it got to the point where the replicant could have the same memories and everything like that, and but then you run into the problem, right, of having to suffer the pains of what your original self has lost, and so I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, they had an 80% failure rate on the replicants. Would you
Right.
want to put yourself through that?
But I think it seemed a lot better now because that was with actual ice when Bob 1 got put on ice versus the stasis pods they're using now. They're supposed to be
Mhm.
better.
Yeah. And I think the failure rate, if I'm not mistaken, in book 1, that was with other candidates as well, not just Bob. So I
Mhm.
think
Yeah.
Bob was one of the stronger of the candidates that they were able to replicate. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of it has to do with strength and stamina. So many
Well,
factors
that
that go
and
into it.
yeah,
We
the
got
VR
that.
saving them.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, it's an interesting thought experiment because after you get past all that, um we're all family guys here.
Hmm.
Um to be around, just look at the relation for Riker with like
Hmm.
his sister's
Right.
family and descendants, and to be around
Hmm.
to kind of share that perspective and to give insight and still mentor if that was the role you took on. Um, I think, on the other side, it could be interesting. Like, imagine if we could converse with our great grandparents. Like, it wouldn't be them, but at the same
Right.
time, to get that perspective from them.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, kind of like that holodeck experience.
yeah.
Go- yeah, bring up a holodeck with grandma and grandpa, and
Yeah.
yeah,
After, oh, go ahead.
well, and I was just gonna say, yeah, the nephews got to experience Uncle Will
Hmm.
uh, physically in the form of a probe, of course,
Right,
uh,
right.
but yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah, you were gonna say?
Oh, just that I wish I had more time for shows, but after going back and listening to this book again, I'm tempted to pull up some Next Generation or something to listen to in the background while I work. Maybe change
Yeah.
up, take a break from books and listen to some Star Trek. It's been forever.
It's been forever for me too. Yeah, I was gonna try out the Picard as well. I just don't want to pay for Paramount Plus, but
Yeah. If you do, let your geek buddies know, because I've been itching to watch some good old Jean-Luc Picard.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah,
I heard it was a good, entertaining at least, and so
it's always hard for old
yeah.
franchises, right? Like, to do
Mhm.
it justice yet still be new and exciting. It's a fine line to walk.
Yeah.
Don't be the Power Ranger. I mean, you
uh,
can, but it's literally the same show, just new cast and different overarching theme. They're Power
mhm.
Rangers, but they're ninjas. They're Power Rangers, and now they have dinosaurs. And yeah, anyway, that was
Yeah.
one of those that you can do a bit of nostalgia, but get something new.
Yep.
Like
But
Bobiverse.
yeah,
Like
for me,
Bobiverse, yeah. Yeah, Bobiverse would make for an entertaining show, I think. Not a
Yeah,
movie. It would have to be a show to really do it justice, but
I
yeah,
agree.
Bobiverse would be fun. And I think it would be well received too.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
one of the things that really struck me about this book is the tonal shift. The first book was uh, very lighthearted in a lot of ways, even though there was a lot of serious moments and a lot of um, dramatic moments.
Mm-hmm.
It was still a lot of fun and laugh out loud moments with some of the nerdy stuff popping up. But
Mm-hmm.
this book was definitely much more on the serious side than book one was, I thought.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's mainly because like we had the whole Bob 2 situation with just getting off Earth and battling the Brazilian probe, and then after he made his first cohort and they all diverged, it was
Hmm.
really only with Riker's thing when he was dealing with the soul survivors, and then the rest of them was just kind of playing von Neumann probe and
Hmm.
playing Bill for mad scientist.
Right.
But then for this one, it was everything's going wrong. Like we thought we were safe on Vulcan and Romulus, but it turns out the others are coming, and we've got,
Hmm.
raptors attacking us, and Bronto burgers and Cupid bugs, and like even
Right.
when we win, we're still fighting. And then just like every other thing we run into, like KKP or Clown Car Planet, it's like, yeah, it's habitable, but it's kind of out there. And
Yep.
then we find other ones and the paths, and yeah, it's just it's pretty depressing. We lost a lot of people too. We
Yeah,
lost
we
Homer.
did. Yeah, that was brutal. I had a tough time with that one because even though I'm not really necessarily a Simpsons fan, but Homer the Bob
He
I got attached to. He was a cool character, and to see him go out like that due to a virus, and basically somebody Deus Ex Machina uh, doing that to him, and then he just couldn't take it, so he ended it. I that was brutal. That was rough for me.
Yeah.
He was our lighthearted one too,
Hmm.
Yeah,
which
it
I
was a
think
good contrast.
made it even harder there. It's been forever since like my first read of this one, but um, it kind of surprised me when we got there, that it was Homer of all things. Like I didn't immediately jump to that. I think as we got closer and started to rule stuff out, everything clicked in. But yeah, it was hard to see that
Hmm.
happen to
Honestly,
him.
or do we pick up the other probe in this one?
Do we pick up the other probe in this one?
Yeah, the guy
Um,
who's likes boats, scared of fish.
yeah, I thought we got him in book one, didn't we? I guess this is a
I
better question for you, Chaz.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember him from book one. I thought he
Or
popped up in book two.
okay, okay. I thought something like that was going to happen from the Australian probe. That's where I thought we were going to have our subterfuge because like the
Mm,
fact that they brought him into the mix and the way they can frame jack or alter their time sense. No, he doesn't have any technical know-how, but yeah, I thought
I
that's
could see
where
it.
we were going to have problems,
Yeah,
and I figured that a lot of the soul survivors didn't have the tech, but yeah, that was rough.
Right.
well, through that story arc, we got to discover a bit more about Bob's past and the original designs, right? Like,
Yeah, how we stole the plans.
yeah, yeah. stole it from somebody else who stole it, who, like, I forget all the details. But yeah, it was pretty interesting, to say the least.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of like the overarching theme of 2 is like, yeah, you thought it'd be awesome to be a von Neumann probe and to live forever and to do all these things. And then, Homer dies, Butterworth dies, Stefan dies, we lose a couple Bobs to the others. We thought we were safe and we're getting stomped to the ground, 15 million ships or 15 million trips, like, remember everything. Yeah. I
Right.
definitely would have done it differently. I don't know if I would have played so much in the Great Void or Beyond. I probably would have tinkered with my VR the whole time.
Right. Yeah. This book definitely gave you the feels on what it really means to manage an exploration mission across the universe and set up new worlds and things like that. It's definitely not cake, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we get to see just how much work it is for the Bobs, right? Like, they're pretty much signing up to be babysitters for humanity. And we get to see a little bit about how the Bobs feel about that as, like, everything comes together.
Yeah, with Bert and Ernie dropping off settlers and getting salty with that, with the Pav incident where they're saying, "Oh, well, we've got another client raise."
Darn ephemerals.
There were a few comical moments still spattered in there that I got a good kick out of. I mean, the Arnold popping up.
Yes.
We got our Arnold Schwarzenegger Bob, and and then of course, what was it? Oh, the distillery that they set up, and trying to deal with the religious authorities on how they can manage their distillery and whether or not they can have it at all. And
we'll put
the devil's drink.
The warning label on all the bottles, not for consumption, and
or
this
resale
area.
And
because that totally works. Good old Crampson.
So I wish we had a couple more tech upgrades, but we did get floating cities and
like a lot of times, I think in history we had a bit of a push after we had the others threat, right? Like, that's when things started to get upgraded
and industry boom after war events,
or leading up to it.
I felt bad for Bill, I think it was, that fell in love with the lady, the Irish lady.
Howard and Bridget.
Oh, Howard. Yeah, that's right. It was Howard. Yeah, Howard and Bridget. I felt bad for him. I mean, in a sense, he should have known that it never would have worked. But I still felt bad for him because they seemed to really click. And,
Yeah, looking back on that, I feel like this book, in a lot of ways, it's the journey for the Bobs from human to machine, right? And in a lot of ways they're different, but they're still kind of like different sides of the same guy. And it reminds us that, like, while the Bobs are so smart and capable, we got to see through Howard how, in a lot of ways, he's still that 31-year-old computer programmer, business owner that, like, in the first couple chapters of book 1, it's just talking about how, I don't want to say socially incompetent, but it seemed like he really struggled with personal relationships and romantic relationships in his real life, just not being his strength.
Right.
And how, like, as the Bobs are all smart and capable, tech wizards who are really specialized doing all this stuff, they're still just, a guy who completely oblivious to Bridget and Stefan's budding relationship or whatever.
Or
Right.
that seems to be like this whole book, because we got Riker, dealing with all of,
Watching
the
the
people
family,
and
yeah.
watching the family grow up and whatnot. And
Mhm.
it reminds me of book one oh, when it talks about him going back home and sitting down in the basement with his father or whatnot. They have a couple words and they just sit there and do their own thing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then just being forced to be available 24/7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting contrast between this book and the first book too. Is in the first book they're kind of dealing with that transition from having formerly been human to now mostly enjoying not being trapped by being human. But then in this book, we see a lot of ways in which they long to experience humanity again, to actually be able to, I wish I could experience love again, or I wish I could experience like real food again, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Just
Yeah.
We've made advancements though, because whenever the scut plans get out and like how it got to original Bob or Bob 2,
mhm,
and he's like, oh, hey, we're having some problems here. I need to update him. And then he's like, wait a minute, this cat's a little more independent and maybe we should do a merge. And it's like, oh, yeah, original is still the leading champion. And same thing happens with the androids,
mhm,
once they get Manny up and operational.
Yeah, and I think he's still the reigning, but also just like as they diverge and they specialize a little bit, we get to see the different directions they go, right?
mhm,
Yeah.
Because Bill goes and plays with all these other different elements and comes up with Scut and et cetera, et cetera.
mhm,
And Bob is still very much in the real space. So like he's always tweaking his VR and interacting with the Deltans and wanting to be able to like recreate their space virtually so he can experience. So he's tweaking it, et
mhm.
cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, and you guys don't need to spoil it, but I am curious to see how far they're willing to go to maybe have the best of both worlds. Like if we'll see them eventually, but creating kind of a hybrid body between human and Bob, or between human and the virtual Bobs. Maybe where they create a hybrid body that stores one of the Bobs in physical form.
More
Uh,
more so than the Manny, instead of it
yeah,
being an extension, being closer to like Data from Star Trek.
exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, more like
Mhm.
Data from Star Trek. I could totally see it going that direction.
I think there's a lot of potential there, and I'm excited by how geeky Dennis E. Taylor is. That like with all these references, that he has a good foundation to pull upon.
Mhm,
And yeah. The nice thing about all the Bobs is the diversity between them. You kind of get to see them pull different directions, right? Like the earlier generations, Bob 1, Howard, I think he's like a couple generations out. Bill, Garfield, Bill's second generation, Garfield, I think's third generation. Like
mhm,
they're still very much in the physical space and interested in the androids, right? And then you
mhm,
get to the
right.
later generations, they're not even worried about their virtual reality. being, realistic, and diverging in different ways. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to see the different groups forming in book 2.
Yeah, it really is. You're right. There is a lot of diversity there, and I wonder if that will continue to be. I wonder if other generations of Bobs after this will continue to be more blasé about their virtual space, or if there will be kind of a renaissance that takes place where they kind of go back and rethink. Okay, well, what could we do to make this more? Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
La di
Carl's
da
like,
da da da.
yeah.
We
But
we
the
We
viewers
we'll
we
let
chat.
had
you speculate.
a lot of similar questions when we went through it. The one that I got from this was Guppy. Guppy keeps getting more memory,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to remember the verbiage. It essentially was like, oh, it looked like Guppy was disappointed, but if you asked me, I couldn't tell you what disappointment looks like on a fish face.
Mhm.
Right.
And we do end up, because the reason we had to control or micromanage the Amy's or the robot guys was because of the mall incident in book 1. But
Mhm.
now we have a Amy Guppy hybrid, essentially putting out the Cupid killers or Cupid
Right.
bug things, and that's one that, like, eh, I want to see it
Show me
go
more.
further, but at the same time, I feel it could just be, the next problem, similar mall incident.
Right. And yeah, on that same note with Guppy, like as much as Guppy's knowledge is expanding and growing, do, I kind of wonder if it's not going to get to the point where Guppy becomes uh,
Sentient.
so yeah, becomes sentient, essentially um, more of a Hal, kind of
And
decide kind of at some point saying, Bob tells him to do something and he's like, no, Bob, I can't do that.
Right,
well, and
right. We
that's
need to talk about
where
my pay raise first.
Right.
the it's the opposite of Bob, because Bob was human and is dealing with
Hmm.
all these emotional dilemmas and, not having arms and figuring out the VR and wanting a real body for the sensations that they don't end up programming. Where
Hmm.
Guppy is literally like the interface layer where all he knows is computer code and, you know, dense printing and, yeah, one for one.
Hmm.
So he's possibly developing backwards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. And I could also see the possibility of some of the younger Bobs rebelling too. All of a sudden deciding, we don't want to be a part of this and maybe going rogue or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
because it's just a multiplier effect. It started
mhm,
off and it was like, Bill and Riker, and it was like, okay, we got to see if any humans are still alive. And then
mhm,
Bill, like, okay, I got to, play mad scientist and orchestrate all this and be the interwebs. And then it's just, those were all like drastic needs where, oh, I just said it earlier. It's, Bert and Ernie, they're just like, I'm a glorified shuttle. And then Mario, who was off and he was trying to, get out of the suburbs, and now he's caught up on the front line. And it's
right.
just like, yeah.
On
Yeah.
on the Bert and Ernie thing, like imagine just kind of the perspective too, because like they set up some basic rules early on where like this senior, like the earlier generation Bob is the one who calls the shots. which is fine when you have
You can
memories
move
of being
away, yeah.
yeah, or you have memories of yeah, but like these later generations, they have memories and existence of being the senior Bobs, and then all of a sudden the later ones like wake up and they have all the knowledge and memories up until that point, and they're like, okay, I was used to being the one calling the shots. I was used to being the senior Bob, here, and now it's like, okay, generation 10, I have memories and experiences of doing all this cool stuff, and now I'm a bus driver.
Right.
Like I have memories of being Bill doing all this cool mad scientist stuff, and then I have memories of being, I think Garfield's the next generation out, like helping and doing all this other cool stuff, and now it's like, okay, like even though I am Bob, I'm now a peon who's just, a bus driver in my total existence, or yeah.
And I feel like original Bob, it wouldn't have worked anyway. Like that just wasn't his MO. And then with perfect memory and computing powers, doesn't make it easier.
We have these threats kind of uniting them, but we're seeing the fractures. I feel the others, like we got to deal with the others. We have to deal with Earth dying. But what happens when we get more generations out and like there's no unifying thing, or they're so disconnected, like, okay, that's humanity's problem, right? Like there's a couple hundred other Bobs. You want to take care of it, that's fine, but I want to go play with the Pav, or I want to go play with the Deltons, or I want to just say, forget you guys, I'm going to try to go disappear into space or whatever.
Yeah, that's a big factor. I'm more worried about the people. Because, we've got Vulcan and Romulus, and, one's more faith oriented and one's more Buttersworth or military oriented. And I think they ended up dividing them pretty close to how they were on Sol. So it's just going to breed, more resentment and, like, oh, it's where things just get blown out of proportion. Everybody sucks at the telephone game.
Yeah, they really do, and you do really start to see it, to see a lot of infighting amongst the Bobs already, or disagreements anyway. There's several moments where they're like, we don't need original Bob's input, or different things like that, and and then the way, some of them disagree with the way, let's see, was it Riker that basically got told by the inhabitants of the world, we don't want you around anymore. I forget, was that Riker?
Or no, that you're talking about Poseidon, right?
Okay. I thought it was Archimedes' people.
Bob.
Okay.
Yep. After he took care of the hippogriffs, they pretty much come to him and they're like, we don't know if we'd be better off or not, or et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we understand what you did.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Okay, yeah, that was pretty rough.
And then several of the Bobs disagreed with how that was handled, and then he's still communicating with Archimedes a little bit, but basically he's trying to keep hands off.
And some of the other key members in the Deltons kind of assume that that's still happening and they're okay with it. I think there's a moment where like Arnold is like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, I'm sure, or like, man, Bob had a really good idea, but don't tell me sort of a deal, when they do the whole reverse psychology with the overcrowding and everything there. Yeah.
And some of the cultures probably would be better off with less involvement or no involvement by the Bobs, and
Hmm.
some of the other cultures might be better off with more involvement. And I think that's tricky too, is for them to figure out, okay, how involved am I going to be in each of these
Well,
species?
and that's
And
where it almost feels like it repeats because kind of like we're saying how all the Bobs are diverging, but they're sticking to tasks because there's a threat of the others, so they're still coming together. Same thing happened with the Deltans. They
Right.
had to fight off the Grilloids and, they had a threat. But then as soon as it got cushy, and there wasn't the threat, they had a couple deaths and injury over a small prey animal that wouldn't have even been, relevant or relative.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very excited to see where it goes and what it's got planned for the future. And do we know if there's going to be more than 4 books?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yes. I did some research around the time we did book 4, and Dennis E. Taylor, I want to say he posted something on Reddit where they asked if there was going to be a book 5.
Hmm.
Um, and his answer was yes, and 6, and 7. So I think he's going to continue this series,
Wow.
which for those who enjoy the references he makes, without doing any other spoilers, it really is fun kind of following down this track because I want to say, like, for book 1, Bob 1 wakes up in like 2133, and
Hmm.
then we end it in 2188. Book 2, we have a little bit of, going back, but then by the end of book 2, we're at like 2221. So we have like 30 to 40 years each book, and we just get to keep seeing the progression here. And
Hmm.
well, and
it's a
that's
lot of
what
fun.
Dennis does well for the whole like frame jacking or speeding up or slowing down your time and then relative speeds between and yeah,
Hmm.
it bounces around quite a bit, but it almost makes sense chronologically separated by time and space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These books do a really great job of balancing scientific mumbo jumbo, if you will, with nerdy references and entertainment. Much more so, I think, than Ready Player One did. I enjoyed that book, but uh, Dennis Taylor writes it in a much more
It, it
believable and coherent way, I think.
it feels more natural and less
It
like
does. Yeah.
all the time slash forced.
Yeah.
Um, I'm with you there. And Ready Player 2 is on my TBR, but
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to touch that one or not. I've heard a lot of mixed things. But we'll see.
yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. We bought it. I enjoyed 1. I'm excited for 2. The
just
interwebs kind of soiled it for me.
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
like, it's a clone, not worth it. Abort now.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, Bob is a great series. I'm excited he's doing more because I'm gonna keep going with it for sure.
so
I
that means we get another stream on your channel here to talk
Oh,
about book 3.
totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's definitely plan on it. And yeah, and I think we'll kind of start winding down here, but I did want to say, yeah, I definitely want to continue these geek outs on the Bobiverse and uh, do some more of these streams for
yeah.
sure.
We're happy to hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Would
Do more. Oh, go ahead.
would you say it's accurate to compare Bobiverse 1, 2, and 3 to Star Wars 4, 5, and 6 feel. Like, I believe book 4, it's
He
just, it has a different feel, you know?
so Chaz has only gotten through book 2.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be too spoilery, but I agree that the first 3 finished
Could
like an arc.
be
It
a
could be a standalone.
standalone.
Right.
And then
Completes a thought.
I have heard that. I heard that originally book 4 wasn't necessarily even planned.
Yeah, he took a lot of time in between 3 and 4,
Yeah.
and 3 felt satisfying.
it wraps up well. And I
Cool.
feel like for the most part, book 2, like it doesn't
It was
necessarily wrap
abrupt.
up, but I don't know. What do you think, Chaz? Do you feel cliffhanger-y? Were you
I
satisfied?
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
I felt like there was a definite cliffhanger feel to it.
Okay.
It definitely felt like book 2, but book 1 could have been a standalone. But then if you continue on into book 2, you better read book 3. And I've run into a lot of series like that where the first book could maybe be a standalone, but then if you continue, you have to finish the series, otherwise you're going to be lost. And I did kind of feel that way with book 2. It answered a few things, but I'm like, no, I think there's more to this story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and this is for those of you who are watching this is going to be really my only video on the Bobiverse book 2, I think. So I'm just going to say right now, I give it a solid 4 stars. I liked it. I liked it. Maybe not as well as book 1, but I definitely liked it. It's a solid entry in the series. So, what do you guys think in terms? I don't know if you do star ratings or what you do, but
Or
do you
that
have any
was
thoughts on it?
4 out of 5, right?
Yeah, 4 out of 5. Right. Yeah.
So the second book is kind of like the middle child. You tolerate
Right.
it, and it adds more.
Yeah.
All in all, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but there was a lot of like, I felt like it ended abruptly. But by the time I got through it, 3 was already out, so I could just marathon through anyway. So it wasn't a huge deal. And yeah, like, it is my least favorite out of the Bobiverse books, but it is still very good for each of the arcs and getting you invested in the characters and asking the philosophical questions. So,
Mhm.
we'll give it a 3.5. Like, yeah,
Fair enough.
it's good. I'd recommend it,
Yeah.
but only with 1 and 3 included.
Yeah. Good point. I kind of feel the same. Yeah. What
For
about you, Carl?
well, real quick, for the record, Peter, who's the middle child?
I am. But that just means I can disappear and I can go do my own thing.
Does that mean you're nothing without Carl? No.
Well, yeah, because that's
I'm
the only way
nothing
we
without you
get
two, middle
the
child.
contrast. Because yeah,
Yeah. Gosh, going on a 5-star rating, I'm just so biased for this series. I enjoy it so much. It's probably one of my top favorite hard sci-fi series. So I'd say a 4 for sure. Especially, I guess in my mind, I still see it very much as a trilogy, just because of when we read it, the first 3 came out really well, or around the same time. And when you look at it side by side for other middle books and trilogies, it
yeah, it's
does
still pretty
so
good.
much better than a lot of other ones where, yes, we still get the world building, we still get the scaling, we still get the development, we still get like our hero's journey of like, all the walls closing in. What are we going to do? So yeah, I'd put it definitely at a 4 out of 5. 3 is a lot of fun. So I know we have so many different books up and around and going, and we're reading right now, but I hope that everyone who's catching this live and or catches it later hops on Chaz's Discord, hops on our Discord, and keeps talking about this series because cannot get enough of it. So
Yeah,
So,
I totally agree.
random sidestep. There's another series that I'm currently listening to, and other authors are playing in the space. So you essentially have the main character, the main storyline, but then they're starting to diverge where everybody who we pick up in our party kind of gets their own like origin story and is written by a different author or co-written. So I know big name stuff like you were just talking about. The Star Trek had the um, fan one that was made, and then Star Wars has switch hands as well as has several I'm playing in the world moments. So it's a universe I think more people should explore, and yeah, with the grand time and space and scaling, be a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, well, we'll definitely be talking more Bobiverse for sure, and I'm anxious to see to hear more about the one you're talking about, Pete. And before we end the stream today, I do want to give you guys a chance to talk a little bit about what's coming up on your channel. And so, Pete, that was kind of a good segue. Tell us a little more on what you guys have got going on coming up.
is that you or me? You want me to go?
Or I think you're next in line
Okay, I'll
for
go.
stuff coming up.
Yeah. So, super excited. Like of 2021, this week we get to do 3 awesome book streams this weekend. This is the first one with Chaz, Bobiverse Book 2. Doing another stream on our channel Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern. It
Or
is
Sunday.
Sunday, thank you. Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern. First book of the second Lost Fleet series, Beyond the Frontier, with our buddies Ramsey from Rajathon and Joe from Unity 151. And then after that, we get to hang out again with our buddy Chaz to do Hyperion Book 2, which I'm hoping I can find time to listen to that one again because I came across that series when I was in a reading slump, and it's like top 10 classic sci-fi books you have to read, and it's definitely on a whole other level. Like I really enjoy the Bobiverse, and like in its bucket and its lane, it's awesome, but Hyperion is just a whole different bucket of epic classic sci-fi. And Chaz, just before we hopped on the stream, you were talking to me about how much you enjoyed it, and I just recently finished it and enjoyed it a whole lot. First read, and I'm like, no, we need to focus on Bobiverse Book
Right.
2 and all its awesomeness. But yeah, like we love hanging out with Chaz on your channel and on our channel, just talking about books, having fun. This has been a blast. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming on. It's been a lot of fun. And I will say too, yes, I'm very much looking forward to Sunday's live stream with you guys for Fall of Hyperion. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I've got a lot of things that I'm just itching to talk about. So that'll be
Yes.
great. And
Yes.
also too, if you guys are watching this stream tomorrow, I am doing a live stream with the Dragons Library Book Club, discussing Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. So that will be a spoiler discussion as well. So there's about 5 of us on the stream. That's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. So
Nice.
look for that. That's not on my channel. Someone else is hosting it, but I'm looking forward to joining in on that. And as we talked about before, make sure that you check out the Discords. If you look in the description below, you can find my Discord. Make sure you join the discussion there. Carl and Pete have a Discord as well, so I should probably plop that down there. I'll have to add that in. And thanks so much for tuning in, and make sure you guys read more books as always. And Carl and Pete, thank you so much for being on the stream with me tonight.
Yep. Thanks for having us. See you Sunday.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been fun.
It has been. Take care. Bye.
Bye.